In today's episode, breaking news surrounding the Flyers, an opening day preview into the Phillies season, and the Sixers just keep on losing. I'm Austin Bennett, and this is the Philly Cheese Take.
Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things.
Philadelphia, and everybody, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank y'all. Fly, Eagles, fly. My last one. BG out, baby.
Starting off today's episode by commemorating Eagles legend Brandon Graham, whose voice you just heard. He announced his retirement last week after a career of 206 games, 65.5 sacks, 487 tackles, and most importantly, 2 Super Bowls, all for our beloved Birds. Thank you, Brandon Graham, for everything that you did for this team. And we remember you as we head into today's episode. A big episode. It's been 2 weeks since our last episode, so we've got a lot of ground to cover and a lot to talk about, especially the breaking news coming out of South Philly. Let's get right into it.
Breaking news.
Flyers head coach John Tortorella has been relieved of his duties as head coach, and assistant Brad Shaw will interim for the remaining 9 games of the season. This comes as a bit of a shock for the Philadelphia area. I mean, just 9 games left in an 82-game season, and you decide to let go of a head coach. There's multiple reasons as to why that may have happened. A lot of speculation. This could be just simply a move done by Briere and the front office as a way to get ahead of opposing teams as they look to replace their head coaches going into the offseason. Maybe an opportunity to evaluate Brad Shaw as he takes over for these 9 games, see what kind of differences are made. May just be something that had to do with animosity surrounding the locker room or the front office and John Tortorella. There were a lot of loud opinions voiced throughout this organization, throughout the 3 years that Tortorella has been a part of this team as head coach, about who he is and what his playing style and coaching style is like. Obviously, there was the whole Cutter Gauthier situation where you draft a guy who seems really promising out of college, and all of a sudden he has zero interest in being a part of this team, all because of who the head coach is and how he goes about his coaching style. And we've seen, more clashing than just that. Matvei Michkov, who is putting on a Rookie of the Year type of season, there's been animosity between him and Torts and how he goes about giving him playing time on the ice and how he's prioritizing him in the team's game plan. So very interesting nonetheless. It'll be exciting to see as the days go on, what kind of information is released further about how all this went down and why all this went down. Still a bit puzzling to me. I mean, you're 73 games through out of the 82-game season, and you decide now is the time to fire your head coach. There's got to be something behind that, if you ask me. This isn't just a move made purely out of the best interest of the team like they say, right? Obviously, changing coaches could be in the best interest of the team, big picture, but doing it with 9 games left in the season, I don't understand that. It's not like the goal right now is to win. You're obviously tanking. I mean, Torts recognized it in his final press conference as head coach 2 days ago, but you go ahead and go through with firing a head coach with just 9 games left. There's got to be some substance behind that change. Something must have happened behind closed doors, whether it was in the locker room or with the front office. Something snapped and led to this change. Very interesting, the comments that ended up being the final comments by John Tortorella as head coach of the Flyers. And during his press conference in the 7-2 loss against the Maple Leafs postgame, he said, quote, "This falls on me. I'm not really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season where we're at right now, but I have to do a better job." Quote. Those are some pretty bold words, and that's the usual for Torts. This is nothing abnormal from Coach Tortorella. He has been bold in both his words and actions throughout his time here in Philadelphia, and that's a really, really gutsy claim to make. I'm not really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season. That may have been the breaking point for this decision to be made. Him saying he's not interested in coaching a tanking team. That might have been enough for Briere and the rest of the front office to say, get the heck out of here. I'm not sure. But those are crazy words to say nonetheless on a podium as a head coach of a team, to say you're not interested to coach your team in the state that they're in right now. That might have been what has done it. And I see both sides, absolutely. If you're Torts, you want to win. You are a very capable coach who has accomplished a lot in his career. He sees this team in this current season and the record that they hold as a bit of a stain on his resume, and I can't blame him for that. You're a winning head coach. You're a very capable leader, and you're not getting a chance to show it this season, not just because the cards haven't fallen in your favor, but because this team is deliberately making moves to get worse. That's not a secret. That's not something they're trying to hide or cover up. This team is blatantly, obviously tanking. They've embraced it. They know it. And that's exactly what they need to do in order to get better and build around Mitch Kov and the other guys in the system. So I understand both sides of it. That's a move that needs to be done. You've got to tank. You've got to regress in order to get better going forward in the future. Build the capital, build the draft picks, build the young roster. But at the same time, if you're the coach, you want to win games. You don't take on these opportunities to blatantly lose. That's not within you as a true good head coach, and that's who Torts is. You can disagree with his style, but at the end of the day, he is a great head coach that wants to win. He wasn't given the opportunity in this situation, in this season, and instead of being patient with it, he went after that, and he expressed it loudly because that's who he is. And who knows if it'll work out for him or not, where he'll head next. But ultimately, the decision was made after saying, I'm not interested in learning how to coach this type of season. They said, okay, if that's where you stand, we will let you stand on that statement and let you go. So very, very dramatic news coming out of Philadelphia this morning. Not what I was expecting to wake up to today. Anyways, we will transition into the biggest and most exciting story heading into this spring in Philadelphia, and that is our Philadelphia Phillies as they chase their fourth straight playoff appearance and look to defend their NL East pennant. They take on a 3-game road series against the Nationals today, and we will waste no time in getting to see some new offseason additions on this roster get playing time as Max Kepler gets his first start as a Philadelphia Philly today. He will bat 6th and play left field as Brandon Marsh has been shifted into center field to kind of cover up where he and Johan Rojas were splitting time last season. Schwarber will obviously designated hit since he's not in left field. And I'm excited to see how Kepler gels with this mostly similar offense or roster compared to last season. Not a ton of changes, but I'm not necessarily upset with that. I like the minimal changes. You've built the foundation. Don't change things up, shake things up too much. Don't let anybody feel like their job is being threatened or they're not secure in their spot. Everybody has appropriately and deservingly established their place in this organization. Now they need to just continue to deliver. So I don't mind the kind of basic minimal additions during the offseason. I think I'd much rather have the trade deadline be where you plug holes once you identify them. There's no reason to plug holes that you're just assuming are there. So I'm not against how the front office has gone about this offseason compared to some voices in Philadelphia, which we'll get into and discuss in just a moment. I just mentioned Johan Rojas. He won't be starting this season for the Phillies, but I'd still love to see him be a priority for this team and somebody who's worked on and continued to cultivate in this environment, work on his bat. There's no doubt that the defensive capabilities are there. You just got to continue to work on his bat. And it's not like he was the worst offensive player in the world. This is a guy who batted .240. I mean, it's not horrific. Obviously, you still want better, especially from a young guy who hasn't really set a ceiling for himself yet. So I don't want to see the team give up on him just yet. But I am glad to see that they're making adjustments and not just settling for a .240 batter. Also really happy to see Rafael Marchand on this roster over Garrett Stubbs as backup catcher, and I expect a big leap from him this season in technically his 4th year as an MLB player, really his 2nd year as a consistent part of an organization. The comparison I make with this decision is actually in contrast to the 2021 Atlanta Hawks. I like using Atlanta sports teams as comparisons to make with Philadelphia sports teams because I am an Atlanta native. I grew up in Atlanta. I still live in the metro Atlanta area, and so I'm surrounded by and very familiar with these teams and these organizations. So let's point at the 2021 Hawks, right? They went on that huge playoff run, went to the Eastern Conference Finals, upset the Sixers in Game 7, all that stuff. And what happened after that? They fell in love with their team. This city absolutely adored every single one of those players on that roster, and that's perfectly fine, right? You experience success, you appreciate those players, right? But the front office has to estrange themselves from that love and look at things in a realistic perspective. And that's what the Hawks failed to do in 2021. They fell in love with all of those players just the same as the fan base. And so they gave all of them money, gave all of them extensions, and they fell into this pattern of mediocrity. I mean, look at Onyeka Okongwu, Clint Capella, John Collins. You ended up having to trade him away as a way to escape that contract that was so terrible. And then the worst one was Bogdan Bogdanovic. I mean, you give a guy 4 years as someone who isn't even starting for your team. Like, that's $20 million a year for your sixth man. That's unbelievable. Because at that point, when they extended him, Jalen Johnson had already taken over, who's a great draft pick, by the way. But that's the comparison that I make. That's a team that fell in love with their players way too much, and as a result, fell into a pattern of mediocrity. And that's what the Phillies really, really need to avoid with this roster and with this organization, because it was a fairy tale run in 2022. It was a team that made you want to fall in love with them, but they have to escape that and estrange themselves from that as a front office and make realistic moves and lead with their brains and not their hearts. And that's exactly what they're doing with picking Marshawn over a guy like Garrett Stubbs. Everybody in the fan base loves Garrett Stubbs. They love how bold he is. They love how he proclaims this team and embraces the Philadelphia culture. And I totally understand that. But that doesn't equate to how good a player is on a field. That doesn't equate to how good he is as a hitter or as a catcher. Realistically, let's think with our brains here. Garrett Stubbs is not necessarily a championship contender player. He's not a guy that necessarily belongs on a championship roster. You have to be willing to swallow that pill and accept that, both as a Phillies fan and as a Phillies front office, and that's exactly what they did. They recognized there's more potential and there's truly just better talent in Marshawn, and they went with him instead. I also really respect Stubbs for how he has embraced the situation. This is not me hating on Garrett Stubbs and saying he's not a capable player. He won't be in the minor leagues this entire season. They will bring him up should there be injuries or just certain scenarios where it's more understandable for him to be on this roster. He will be a part of this roster at certain points. But he has embraced this situation extremely well. He has welcomed himself into the Iron Pigs locker room and has said that he's looking forward to building the team foundation and culture there. And I really respect that from him. He's handling the situation extremely well. And his time very well may come with these Phillies. But I like that they're leading with their brains and not their hearts and picking Marshawn over Stubbs. They're doing the same thing finally with the designated hitter situation, and some people are upset with that. Some people don't like how indecisive Rob Thompson is being with the designated hitter situation. Some people are upset with the way that he has been handling the situation, but I'm not upset with it just yet. He's been saying, in certain pitching situations, we're going to be using Schwarber as the leadoff guy. Other situations is going to be Trey Turner. That's a step in the right direction towards leading with our brains and not our hearts. Sometimes you got to swallow that pill, like I said, and make a change. And I think that's what we're beginning to see at the designated hitter spot. I want to kind of shift into some of the opinions that have been expressed about these Phillies in the Philadelphia media. Hunter Brody, I got a lot of respect for the guy. He is another kind of younger face of sports broadcasting that I look up to. Him and Carlo Jimenez of the Clippers are two guys that I follow on social media closely and get inspired by. I've got a lot of respect for the guy. However, his take on the Phillies really upset me. This show is all about positivity and providing an alternative and unbiased perspective on Philadelphia sports. And I got to counter what he has said about the Phillies just a few days ago because it was ridiculously negative and biased. He's complaining. I wasn't able to pull up the direct quote because Twitter's down right now, but he's complaining that there hasn't been enough urgency from this team. He's not satisfied with the changes that have been made. Hunter, we haven't even played a game yet. We are at game 0 out of 162 on this season, and you're already sitting here saying that this team doesn't have enough urgency, that they don't have a sense of urgency. How are you supposed to measure that? How are you supposed to judge that? I understand you're focusing on the offseason changes, but you haven't even given those guys one game to show what kind of adjustments have been made. It's unbelievable. Stop pushing that kind of negativity. Now, if you want to sit here 30 games in when we have a 16-14 record, hypothetically, and say this team doesn't have enough urgency, I'll hear you out on that. Absolutely. But we haven't played one game yet. Can we calm down just a little bit? We have got the best starting rotation in baseball. We have one of the most capable offensive batting orders in baseball. What kind of changes do you want? It's not like Shohei Ohtani is a free agent. Let's calm down a little bit. You're overcompensating for this so-called lack of urgency by showing too much urgency as a member of the media. Let's not overhype things. Let's calm down. Let's give this team a chance to prove themselves and then evaluate. It's ridiculous. Let them play, and then we'll respond. I don't want this preemptive negativity based on assumptions. That's ridiculous. It sets the team up for bad emotions, bad vibes, and I don't understand how anyone out there willingly consumes that kind of content and feels inspired from it. It's ridiculous. Let's speak positively on this team while we have the opportunity to, right? Like we'll be negative when we have a reason to be negative. I will sit here and call something what it is when it needs to be said. But there's no reason to be saying that kind of stuff right now. We're not at that point yet. The season still has not even started. I'm sorry for that rant, but that just drove me a little bit crazy. I mean, I called out, who is it, Joe DeCamera, in last episode, being way too negative about the whole C.J. Gardner-Johnson situation, I believe it was. And I'm going to call out Hunter Brody here. As much as I respect you and enjoy your content for the most part, that was ridiculous. Let's move on to the final topic of this episode. We got a quick one. Despite all the big news, we've done a good job of breaking everything down to y'all in 30 minutes or less, as I promised to do each week. Talking about the Sixers, they have fully embraced the tank. I talked about Adam Aronson's quote 2 weeks ago that Sixers fans are finally back in their comfort zone with tanking, and couldn't have put it better myself. Had a key loss to the Wizards last night, 119-114, a masterclass of tanking by Nick Nurse and crew, subbing Quentin Grimes out with less than 3 minutes remaining in a one-possession game. That's beautiful stuff. I love it. I mean, it's blatant, sure, but don't judge us. Don't come after us, NBA and Adam Silver, with investigations, because I want to point out the Washington Wizards here. They've got the worst record in the NBA. And listen to this. Jordan Poole, who you signed to that huge extension, treated like an absolute superstar, and I still think he has the potential to get back to that point, but your number one guy, your face of the franchise, explain to me why in this game he played 22 minutes and sat out the entire fourth quarter. So I don't want to hear a word about Nick Nurse subbing out Quentin Grimes, yada, yada. I don't want to see a single investigation involving that crap when you've got Jordan Poole playing 22 minutes against the Sixers. That's extremely suspicious. So let's measure both sides of the equation here before we go after a team and draw conspiracies. After that loss, the Sixers now sit once again at a 9.8% chance at the number one pick, which I believe has been kind of the high point of their percentage chance throughout this season. 10% chance at Cooper Flagg. That's not bad. And I'm going to put on my conspiracy cap for just a moment here. I've been saying this around tight circles for a little while now, and I think I'm finally brave enough to bring it in front of y'all. I do think that there's a decent chance that you see Adam Silver's script fall in the Sixers' favor this offseason. Right? You look at the number one picks, and LeBron himself went on the airwaves the other day and talked about this, so I'm willing to come out and say it now too. They're very particular and meticulous about who ends up with the number one pick each season, right? LeBron ended up being a hometown guy, and ultimately, for the most part, number one picks, they don't fall to small market teams. Why is it that the Sixers for years and years pushed for a new stadium in South Philly, finally got approval for it from the city, and then all of a sudden decided, oh, we're actually just going to do some renovations to Wells Fargo Center and not really pursue that at the moment. Why do you think? It's because they made a sacrifice. They sacrificed those new stadium plans in exchange for the number 1 pick so that they could land Cooper Flagg and truly make this team a championship contender. Call me crazy if you want. We'll see how it plays out in June. I'm just letting y'all know now so that nobody is too shocked if that ends up being the case, okay? Because explain to me how else those cards fall in that order. Why do you pursue a brand new stadium being approved for years and years and years, finally get approval, and then all of a sudden not act on it? I don't know. Something's going on there. That's all I'm trying to say. Just throwing that theory out there. We'll keep an eye on it. This may be a little audio clip that we come back to in 3 months and see how well it aged. That's pretty much all I've got to talk about for this week's episode. However, I do want to leave y'all with a brand new segment that I'm going to start every single week. Didn't have a great option this week, but we're still going to run with it. And you guys can leave suggestions if you'd like for people or situations that you want highlighted in future episodes. Again, this show is all about pushing positivity and providing an unfiltered and unbiased perspective on Philadelphia sports and national sports as a whole. And so I want to start a segment called The Positivity Pinpoint, where we recognize someone in the sports world or something in the sports world that occurred within the last week that deserves praise. And so this week, I'm going to shout out John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks, currently on a run in the March Madness NCAA basketball tournament. They are the lowest seed remaining in the tournament with the 10 seed. They just upset St. John's. This is the first season where Calipari has been coaching these Razorbacks after a huge, successful, long tenure with the Wildcats of the University of Kentucky. And in his first season, he's making an undeniable impact, continuing to win huge games and establish himself as one of the best coaches in college basketball history. Big shout out to Calipari and that entire Razorbacks roster. Best of luck to y'all the rest of the way in the tournament. I'm always rooting for underdogs and excited to see how far of a run they can make. That's all I've got this week. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to check out all my social medias. You can find that in the description. I got a link tree. Appreciate all the support that you could extend. Leave ratings, leave comments, leave feedback. What do you want to see going forward? What did you enjoy? Every bit of feedback helps. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. God bless, and I'll see y'all next week.